I could feel everyone's eyes on me as I stepped onto the runway, but this time it wasn't the stares of disgust or pity that had followed me my entire life. This was different. The cameras flashed, capturing my pale skin and my fierce gaze. I wasn't the ghost they had called me in school. I wasn't the unwanted child. I was the star, and Paris was watching. My father never accepted me. I'm not joking. The day I was born, he refused to even look at me. I know this not because I remember it. Of course, I was just a baby, but because my mother would recount that day with a mixture of sadness and resignation in her voice. He didn't even hold you yet one day, she would say. He looked at me, at you, and said, "This is not my child." You see, I was born with albinism. Pale skin, light eyes, hair so fine it was almost white. My father took one look at me and decided that my mother had betrayed him. That's what he told everyone who could listen. That she had cheated, that she had brought shame to our family. It's a common belief where I'm from that albinos are born when a man sleeps with a woman in the afternoon. Since my father never did anything with my mother in the afternoon, he believed that there was a foul play, and so, just like that, he walked away. My father wasn't the only one who believed my mother had been unfaithful. Others who were more spiritual insisted a ghost had visited her during the night. My mother, torn between shame and fear, tried to silence the rumors, but my father refused to believe anything but the worst. Growing up in the city wasn't easy for a girl like me. Lagos is loud, vibrant, and full of life, but it can be cruel to those who don't fit in. I didn't fit in. Our neighborhood was a bustling maze of narrow streets and crowded markets. The constant noise and movement were overwhelming for my sensitive eyes. My eyesight was poor because of my condition, and I squinted constantly, trying to make sense of the blurry world around me. From as early as I could remember, the neighborhood kids would point at me and call me names like Ghost, Oyibo, which means white person. But it wasn't just the taunt of Ghost Girl that pained me. Some of the other kids spread wild rumors about why I looked different. One girl whispered that her parents had told her a white man had impregnated my mother. Another boy claimed I was the ghost of a European colonist come back to hunt them. Some even said I was possessed by an evil spirit, that the color of my skin was a sign of a dark curse. Each lie cut deeper than the last, and no matter how much I told myself they were wrong, the damage was done. The school was worse. Children can be cruel, and I was an easy target. I was always the odd one out, the girl with skin too pale for the African sun. They laughed at me and asked if I could see them, and shoved me in the hallways as if I didn't know how different I already was. Sometimes I feel invisible, except for the moments when I wished I could actually disappear. The worst part of it all was my face. As a teenager, albinism makes your skin sensitive and prone to black spots, especially when you're constantly exposed to the sun. But my mother, a nurse at a local clinic, could not do so much. We didn't have the money for the expensive creams that could have helped prevent the damage. So I grew up with dark spots dotting my pale skin. I was so self-conscious about it, and for a long time, I didn't see myself as beautiful. When I looked in the mirror, all I saw was the girl my father didn't want, the girl who was stared at, whispered about, bullied, and there were days I hated myself, hated the skin I was in. It felt like I was destined to live in the shadows, always overlooked. My teenage years was filled with superstitions, not just from strangers, but from well-meaning relatives too. I was barred from eating salt because they believed it would harm me. One particular aunt was convinced that my condition was because I didn't spend enough time in the sun. If only the sun could touch her skin more, she said, shaking her head in pity. It didn't matter that too much sunlight could cause my sensitive skin to burn or increase my chances of skin cancer. Others told my mother that albinos couldn't be intelligent, that we were somehow doomed to be slower, less capable, and I believed it. Why wouldn't I? I had never seen an albino doctor or lawyer, nor had I seen actors or teachers who looked like me. I wanted to change that, but I never knew how. Then everything changed the day I met Chike. It was my first year in university. I had spent my entire teenage life shying away from attention, hiding behind baggy clothes, and avoiding eye contact with everyone who looked too long. But Chike was different. He didn't look at me with pity or disgust. He looked at me like I was the most interesting person in the room. I remember the first thing he said to me. I was sitting alone in the library, pretending to study, when he walked over and smiled. "Do you know that you have the most unique eyes I have ever seen?" he whispered. I looked up, confused, unsure if he was teasing me like so many others had before. But his smile was genuine, his eyes kind. From that day, Chike became my closest friend, but our friendship didn't blossom overnight. At first, I kept my distance, not wanting to get too close. I had resigned myself to a life in the shadows. I had built walls so high that no one could get close enough to hurt me. And I have come to accept that as my fate. It was better to be lonely than constantly reminded of how different I was. But Chike had a way of breaking down my walls with kindness and patience. He would find me sitting alone and join me, talking about books, music, anything. Chike saw something in me that I couldn't see in myself. He believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. And most importantly, he made me see that my albinism wasn't something to be afraid of. It was something that made me unique. Chike's belief in me was relentless. And over time, I believe it too. With his help, I learned the truth about my condition. Albinism wasn't the result of a curse or the touch of a ghost. It was caused by a gene mutation that prevents the production of melanin. This pigment gives our skin, hair, and eyes their color. It was science, not superstition. But in a place where myths held more weight than facts, the truth was often ignored. And I had been a victim of that ignorance for as long as I could remember. The ignorance didn't stop at name calling or exclusion. At times, it grew far more dangerous. When I was in year three, the fears and rumors surrounding me took a darker turn. One afternoon, as I was walking home from school, a group of men tried to kidnap me. They grabbed me and blindfolded me. But before they could drag me away, a passerby spotted the struggle and called for help. The men fled, but I was shaking and terrified. When the ritualists were arrested later, they confessed that they had believed my body parts could be used for money rituals. They thought albinos had magic powers, that somehow my body parts could make them rich and powerful. It was a terrifying reminder of how ignorance could lead people to terrible things. The incident traumatized me, and for months I barely went out. With Chike by my side, I began to overcome fear. He encouraged me to take better care of myself and to invest in my skin and my confidence. Together, we saved up to buy creams I had been too embarrassed to ask for. Slowly, the dark spots on my face lightened, and for the first time, I started to feel comfortable in my own skin. It was Chike who suggested I try modeling. At first, I laughed it off. Me, a model. I don't think I have the confidence to strut or walk in front of people and cameras. But Chike saw something in me that I couldn't deny. You are beautiful, Yetunde, he said one evening as he sat in his tiny apartment. You've always been beautiful. The world just needs to see it. And so, with Chike's encouragement, I went for my first modeling audition. See, I was terrified, convinced that they would laugh me out of the room. But to my surprise, they didn't. They loved me. They loved my pale skin, my unusual features, and my striking eyes. They told me that I was different, and that was exactly what the industry needed. It shocked me. I walked out of that audition with my first modeling contract in hand, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I belonged somewhere. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. My first runway show was nerve-wracking. The night before I lay awake in bed, my heart pounding as doubt crept in. What if they realized they made a mistake? What if the audience saw me as a joke? When I finally stepped out onto the runway, the light blinded me, and for a split second, I panicked. I thought about turning back, but then I heard Chike's voice in my head. You belong here, Yetunde. Let them see you. I took a deep breath, straightened my back, and walked. Each step felt like I was shedding the old me. The girl who had been ashamed of her skin was no longer hiding. Over the next few years, my career blossomed. I started out modeling for small local brands, but soon my name began to spread. I was the albino model from Lagos, the girl who had defied the odds and risen above rejection and bullying. And as my confidence grew, so did my opportunities. Before long, I was walking the runway for some of the biggest fashion brands in Nigeria. My face graced the covers of magazines, and people who once looked at me with disgust now admired me, even envied me. Some were even posting me on their status and on Instagram. A few years later, my career took off. I was invited to model for a major fashion event in Paris. Paris, the city I had only ever dreamed of visiting. I couldn't believe when I got the call. And the best part, Chike was coming with me, not just as my partner, but as my manager. He had always believed in me, but now he was part of the journey too. Walking down the runway in Paris with the lights flashing and the audience captivated, I felt something I had never felt before: complete and utter pride in who I was. I wasn't just the albino girl anymore. I was Yetunde, a woman who had overcome every obstacle thrown her way, a woman who had turned her rejection into success. A few months after Paris, I was offered a modeling contract in Italy, representing some of the biggest fashion brands in the world. My face was everywhere in magazines and TV, commercials. In fact, if you check very well, you will see my face on the biggest billboard in your city and even on the very creams you might be using today. I had become a sensation, and with Chike by my side, we built an empire together. Looking back now, I realized that my father's rejection was never about me. It was about his own fear, his own insecurities. He couldn't handle the idea of having a daughter who didn't fit into the perfect idea he had created in his mind. But that is his loss, not mine. I used to imagine what it would feel like to confront him, to stand in front of him as the woman I'd become: successful, loved, strong. But now I realize that his absence shaped me in ways I never expected. I learned to find my worth within myself, not in the approval of someone who couldn't see past his own fear. I don't know where my father is now, but I've made peace with my past. I have Chike, my husband, who has loved me for whom I am from the very beginning. Together, we have two beautiful children. Once I gained success, I knew I couldn't let my story end with just my own victory. I partnered with organizations like the Albino Foundation of Nigeria, the Initiative for Advancement of the Albinism Cause, to make sure young albino children didn't have to face some torment and rejection as I had. We work to spread awareness, to challenge the harmful myths that had followed me my whole life, and to ensure that every child with albinism had the support, protection, and opportunities they deserved. If I could make the world just a little kinder for them, I knew I had done something truly important. But even in the glow of success, the shadows of my past lingered. I had risen above my father's rejection, but the scars of his absence remained. I often wondered if he had ever seen my magazines and TV ads. Did he recognize his daughter he had abandoned? Did he feel any regrets? Please like and subscribe.